Hello, everybody. My name is Marsh, and welcome to my review of the 7th episode of the Rings of Power TV series. Let's go ahead and jump into it. Okay, so this is going to be a spoiler-filled review, so if you haven't seen the episode yet, click off this video, go watch it, and come back. I'll give you a few moments to go ahead and do that if you haven't seen it. In the meantime, if you could leave a like and subscribe, that would be greatly appreciated. So, I'm going to go ahead and give you some pros, give you some cons, and we'll go ahead and talk about the episode overall. This one is definitely going to be less of a rant. I didn't have as many issues with this episode. And actually, certain parts of it I liked a lot more than previous episodes, to be honest, in the show. So let's go ahead and just jump right into it with what I enjoyed more. So, pro number one. So, pro number one is basically what they're doing with the Durin's Bane storyline as well as Durin and Elrond. There are some nitpicks and issues I have with the storyline overall that we'll go ahead and get into. But the overall emotion, acting, and writing in these scenes, I feel like are overall better than everything else we're getting out of other scenes and storylines. So specifically, we have Durin in this episode, and Durin is pleading with the king, his father, to mine for the Mithril to help save the elves, and his father turns them down. And so we get to see Durin's reaction to that, how he actually truly cares for Elrond, at least. I don't know if it's all the elves, but he cares for Elrond. And basically the actions that are leading up to Durin's Bane in this Rings of Power Amazon universe. I think what I'm going to have to start doing is start putting in my headcanon that this is an actual Tolkien lore, and this is like a separate multiverse in a way, to try to justify the changes they're making, which I'll talk about later in the episode. But they're basically leading towards Durin Bane being less of a decision of greed and more of a decision of a sympathetic friend. So instead of the dwarves getting greedy and mining for Mithril and then causing the Balrog to awake and causing what leads to the Mines of Moria and Durin's Bane, they're going to do it similar where he is mining for Mithril and everything, but instead he's doing it for a good cause. So they're making him sympathetic instead of greed-filled, I guess, versus the king, who is more cautious. And we see at the end of the episode, he seals up the vein after Durin breaks his wishes and does what he does. Along that, though, the overall dialogue with a lot of the dwarven storylines is much better than everything else. So, for example, especially between Durin and his father, those are very good. Even Disa and Durin as well have good dialogue and exchange with good analogies. The show oftentimes will try to do a lot of analogies and throw them in there, thinking they're like deep and people are going to get so much from them, but they don't like pass. But the ones that they do in regards to the Dwarven Kingdom actually somewhat work sometimes. And overall, the scenes with Disa and Durin are very good, actually. They play off each other, they motivate each other, and she motivates him to start Durin's Bane, I guess, and I guess that's the aspect they're going to take for it. But they have good dialogue with that, and then Elrond comes in, and he basically has to tell Elrond that he can't save him. Elrond leaves after returning the Mithril nugget, I guess, and he throws it next to the leaf, and he sees that it heals the leaf, and after seeing that, he basically can't turn himself on the elves, because he knows he can save them. Like, I don't know, the king's kind of evil because you see it, and basically, if you know you can save someone, and even more, a whole race of people, and you decide not to, when it's easily in your grasp, it's very selfish and, I mean, evil in some aspects, that what his father's doing. And so he basically, he can't do that. His heart's too good, essentially. And so he and Elrond break into the mines, and they decide to mine the Mithril themselves. They do that. They get caught. After they find a huge vein of Mithril, which basically could save all the Elven Kingdom. And so the king goes and seals up the tunnel, and he pushes Elrond out of Moria. He can't come back. And and disowns his son. Basically, they get into an argument, which is actually one of the better parts of the show, is the dialogue that the king and Durin have together. And they get into an argument and no longer are father and son, essentially, or I guess more of a royal lineage thing. And basically, the breaking point for the king was when he tried to compare Elrond to his brother, and the king is basically racist towards elves, and so comparing an elf, or saying an elf is your true kin, essentially, as if he matches up to what your mother is born in. That's why he takes such offense to it. And so we see at the end, Durin's father, the king, seals up the tunnel, and he throws a leaf out. We see the little leaf go down, and then the Balrog awakens, because we know what's coming when it comes to Moria. It's just a matter of how they do it, and it seems like they're going to do it instead of a greed. It's going to be a sympathetic thing, not greed motivated. So that's the pro when it comes to that part of the episode. I do have some cons even with the dwarven stuff. It's not all perfect. One of the little nitpicks, which I'll just mention briefly because I've talked about it before, is the soundtrack overall. I don't have an issue with the soundtrack. I just feel like they don't let anything breathe. Sometimes when you're watching, it feels like the show is a symphony and the video is just to accompany the music, because they never turn it off. They never have any moments of silence. And that's as much as I'll talk about that, because I've mentioned it in previous reviews. Along with that, I do have slight issue with the way they're handling Durin's Bane. I feel like, not in the aspect of making Durin a sympathetic person that wants to save Elrond and the elves, and that's why Durin's Bane's going to happen. I don't have an issue with that, because I feel like they're forced to do that because of what they set up. The idea of setting up the elves to have this mithril to live is the main inherent issue. If they never set that up, Durin's Bane could still follow the same storyline and be greed motivated and go through that whole section. But because they set it up with this mithril element, that's why they're forced to make Durin a sympathetic character. I don't know if that was just to build his character himself, because otherwise, what are the dwarves bringing to everything in regards to this? Why do they need help at all? They can really just be excluded for the most part from a lot of it, outside of maybe a little bit of crafting. So that's probably why they did it, so that the dwarves get more motivation, and so that they can make Durin a sympathetic character that didn't know what he was doing and he was just trying to help, and it causes people to die. I see what they're doing. I just think doing that with the mithril going against the lore was a bad idea in general, and now they're having to fix their issue by making Durin a sympathetic character. So we'll see how they handle that going forward, but that is a con at the moment for me. Going into the next pro, though, the next pro for me would be in regards to the Stranger again, not the Harfoots, though. I don't really like the Harfoots, but the Stranger himself, building him a little bit more. Now he's going off on his own, and it's always just interesting trying to see what he is. We assume that he's Gandalf or Sauron. He's some type of wizard. We assume that, and it's probably not going to be an interesting answer when we get it, but I still am enjoying the mystery as is with the Stranger. The Stranger leaves after trying to save the tree and bring life to the tree. He basically gets sent off by the Harfoots to be on his own and go with humans, giant people, as they say. And he almost causes Nori and like a little kid to die because a branch breaks off the tree when he's trying to heal it. And he does heal it successfully. When he gets sent off, you see a little sprout come up. And then even later in the night, you see multiple leaves. And basically there's a trail behind him of life that's occurring. So we see he was successful. And the Harfoots don't really notice this at first. They notice it after the fact, and we'll get into that. But going along with the Stranger, the next positive is that of the Priests of Saruman. They also have or not the Priests of Saruman, of Sauron, I'm assuming. We don't really know what they are yet. We're assuming the Priests of Sauron. They have a slight mystery to them as well. Because of my dislike of the Harfoots, I enjoyed when they burned all their carriages down, because I'm a sadistic person. So that's a positive in my end. But even though I don't like how they, even though they got a lot of flack when they first, because people thought that one guy was Sauron, one of the priests, but he's not. So they got a lot of flack at first, but I'm enjoying the mystery around it. They haven't really shown them much, which is good in the aspect of things because they may ruin it with their writing overall, but we'll see how that goes. Going into a negative, though, that is going to be the Harfoots. I do not care about the Harfoots anymore. I feel like there's no reason for their story. They're basically making Nori and her friend be a secondhand Sam and Frodo, which is an issue with the show overall. They're making a lot of characters just be secondhand caricatures of previous characters in Lord of the Rings. So they're basically going to go off and be Sam and Frodo together and go to find Gandalf. But the older guy's going to go with them too, apparently. But that's not my only issue with the Harfoots. They're not very smart and they're not very good people, to be honest. They always leave their kind behind when they're talking about these stories. They're kind of cruel. There's some people they can save. They were willing to let Nori's father die when they literally could have just put him in anyone's carriage. Like, is it really that much more for like a 40-pound like Harfoot to be sitting in a carriage when you have all these people to drag? You tell me, like, there has to be one person that's not dragging a cart around. Come on. You have that along with the aspect where they're not very forgiving. They, for example, when he attacks the tree and they send him off, they see the life coming from the tree whenever the priests are there, but no one's willing to follow. No one's like, oh, it looks like he actually did something good. Life is sprouting and we should go help him. Nori speaks up to help, but no one else really does. And they're just kind of like, I don't know, they're not the best people, to be honest. They're kind of like jerks and they're just to themselves and they're selfish. And so we'll see how they develop them, but I'm not really enjoying anything with the Harfoots. I don't see reason for them anymore, especially now that the stranger left them. The only reason to show any more Harfoot story is with Nori trying to find the stranger again, which is, it's just an excuse for them to keep them in there. I feel like they could have just like forgotten about them at this point because there's really nothing interesting to them. The only interesting aspect was the stranger. And so we'll see what they do with their secondhand Sam and Frodo. As far as positives for the episode, that's really it for the most part. There's like no major, actually there are other major complaints that we'll get into, but I don't have any like major glaring positives I wanted to review. Going into some of the things I disliked though about the episode, one major thing that I notice is with Galadriel. She's still my least favorite character. I don't like what they're doing with her at all. And one thing that really surprised me with what they did was imply that Celeborn, her husband, was dead. Like, that just... He can't be dead because he shows up in Lord of the Rings, unless they're doing a total canon of their own where it doesn't combine with Lord of the Rings. Then I don't know what they're going to explain. I guess they're going to say after they fought Sauron, she thought he was dead, but he got like stranded somewhere and she has to find him. And it's just more annoying too, because the only reason they're doing this is so they can build a fake relationship with Halbrand and Galadriel and pretend for them to fall in love with each other, even though Celeborn is still alive. And they're basically just using it as an excuse to make Galadriel not seem as bad of a person because she's going to fall in love with Halbrand in the meantime and have some sort of conflict with it all. So it's just annoying because they're forcing a relationship between the two of them, which is just unnecessary. Just because two stranded people find each other and they're attractive doesn't mean they got to date. There's no reason for it, so it's just annoying. And Galadriel overall still has her issues. She's not the best of commanders, and she oftentimes will say a lot of stuff that she finds inspirational, and it's not very inspirational, and that's partly just bad dialogue and writing by the writers. I'm not going to harp on it too much because I've talked about it like so much previously, and Galadriel overall is probably the worst character in my opinion of all of them, with the least development. Essentially for this episode though, we see that consequences don't matter either because or at least for Galadriel they don't matter, because all she does is get ash on her apparently. She doesn't even get like a scar or a burn. Since when are elves immune to fire? I don't know. We see burns and scars on everyone else, except for Bronwyn for some reason, but everyone else has burns and scars. But they can't like give a few burn marks to Galadriel at the minimum. They just cover in her in ash, when literally she just stood there in the middle with no cover, and, like, took the brunt of the eruption. That's just another complaint with Galadriel. But going into more like detail on other stuff, the episode itself, we see Isildur. They're playing it up like he died. He can't die, obviously. That's another dumb thing. We know there's no stakes, and we know he's not going to die because he's in Lord of the Rings. He's the one that gets the ring from Sauron and has the ring after they defeat Sauron in Mordor. So we know he's not dead. So there's no really suspense in terms of like what's happening to him and the horse freaking out and running away. So it's kind of like a wasted plot. I don't know if they're just going to use it like for him to stay in Middle Earth. Is it going to be like they go back to Numenor, he stays in Middle Earth and he falls in love with Middle Earth and wants to protect Middle Earth, and that's when he creates Gondor and all these other things to help protect Middle Earth, and then when the Numenorians come back, he doesn't want to return with them. I guess that's what they're doing. I don't know. We'll see. And then along with that, the only one who actually had any consequences for her actions was Muriel. She became blinded from the ash. And so that was good to at least see that they did give some consequences to one of the main characters. And so she does have some type of handicap now because she did get blinded. And I don't know if that contradicts because she did have the vision of Numenor sinking. I assume the vision was more of like what she'll see in the future, like through her own eyes. But I guess she'll never see Numenor fall now or sink. Technically, she'll never see it. So she did her job because she didn't want to see that. She probably didn't prevent it, but she won't see it. But that's fine. I'm glad they actually showed consequences for her versus everyone else. And then basically all the Numenorians are returning. There's some bad dialogue with Elendil, and like the horse. That was like really dumb. I get that he's like sad because his son is dead, but it's fine. Or he thinks his son is dead. Like, you're trying to tame a horse. I don't know. It was really dumb. They tried to set it up in the previous episode saying like you can speak to your horse or something like that, or he can feel your rider. So I see what they're setting up. I just don't agree with it. And so they go back and he's like heartbroken. He never wants to return to Middle Earth again, which a lot of Numenorians are probably going to feel the same because of the losses that they had overall. And so we'll see how they handle that. I'm assuming they're just going to become more racist and want to be more exclusionary. And this is going to build the disconnect between Pharazôn and Muriel. And Muriel's going to want to go help the Southlands, and Pharazôn's going to try to take in those people who don't want to help them and be that antagonist for Numenor in season 2. That seems like what they're setting it up for. And then finally we end the episode with Halbrand. They don't mention him at all, and then all of a sudden they just find him in a tent with a deadly wound that's so deadly he needs elven medicine. But he's healthy enough apparently that he can ride a horse. I don't know how you have a giant gash in your side and you need special magic elven medicine to heal, but you can ride a horse perfectly fine. And they always do like these hail to the king kind of thing, or strength of the king. And it's always just so cheesy. I don't feel like they do these triumphant moments that aren't really like earned with these like tiny little crowds, and just like doesn't really like pay off that well. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with Halbrand and all of them. He's obviously Sauron. Oh, and finally the episode ends with Adar and the orcs, and a really cheesy way of doing it. Basically like, oh, we're not calling it the Southlands. What are we going to call it? Mordor. Except they don't say Mordor. They just show some text on the screen and they change it to say Mordor. I guess that's better than them saying, like, actually saying Mordor, because people will think it's cheesy if Adar's like, Mordor. But is it more cheesy? Like, they're asking you what you're going to call it, and he's just, like, sitting there all quiet. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, this is the creation of Mordor, I guess, in the Southlands. So there you go, people. That's what Rings of Power decided to make as the origination of the South of Mordor. The final thing I wanted to talk about was the issue I mentioned earlier. This show likes to take character arcs and stories and reuse them from Lord of the Rings. You have basically Durin and Elrond are secondhand Legolas and Gimli, two elves that have become best friends despite their differences. You have Nori and her friend are going to be secondhand Sam and Frodo, going on an adventure together as hobbits, out of the ordinary, going away from the pack to go ahead and, I don't know, find the stranger, I guess, in this case. But they're two hobbits going to adventure off away from the pack that they're building up. You have secondhand Aragorn, and we know how that is. They're basically Return of the King secondhand Aragorn with Halbrand, who's actually going to be Sauron. And then you also have like some other stuff as well. We have the forced relationship between Bronwyn and Arondir. I don't think they still haven't built that up very well. It's not believable to me as of right now. They don't really have any real chemistry in my eyes, and I think partly that is the dialogue between them and the writing that's been done so far. And finally, you also have Galadriel, which is probably the biggest issue I have with what they're doing with her character. They went away from the wise elf kind of thing, and they're trying to make her into this strong commander, and she just became like arrogant and brash and really annoying. And now that she mentioned that her husband died, all of a sudden it's making like it's just annoying. They're trying to build a relationship between secondhand Aragorn and her, and we'll see what they do with it. But Celeborn should be alive. He's there in the Third Age with Lord of the Rings. I'm not even a Silmarillion expert, and I know that. So that really like shocked me when I heard her say that. And so I'm assuming they're implying he's dead, but he has to still be alive somehow. So he's going to show up eventually, and we'll see. But it's just annoying the way they're handling it all. I do, however, despite all my cons, think this is one of the better episodes so far with what they've shown. I think part of that is because of how much we got of Durin and Elrond, because they are the best part of the show right now, despite everything. And so this one gets it more to the average in regards to episodes, and I do think it was better than last episode's, despite that being a battle and a lot of people liking that episode. But it's still a long way to go. It's below average writing. The show and the visuals try to make up for it a lot, but I don't think you can do that all the time. There's only so much you can do for it, and it's hard to overcome stupid writing, basically, because that's the foundation for anything. And let's say if you build a foundation for a house and it's shaky, that house is going to collapse. So hopefully by the end here they can wrap it up in a certain way and leave leaves going into the second season, and the writers can fix all the issues that they had in season 1. Because right now, if it's the same writers and they feel confident and they're going to keep them, that's going to be rough. We'll see how they pay it out. I don't know if I could give them benefit of the doubt anymore. We'll see. 1 episode left, and then we have our finale. But that's what I thought overall of the episode. What did you guys think? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you can leave a like and subscribe, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you for watching. I appreciate your time, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.